in the fall of 1918, when the flu epidemic happened here in this country and in other countries as well, he passed away on the 1st of December. And this story is really very, very, it's just this time of the year, and this is why it's so fresh in my memory. She, after he passed away, I never knew my father. They were married 3 or 4 months when he passed away.
And the trials of life nearly done. Let us sing of the days that are gone, Maggie, when you and I were young.
It's so ridiculous in a way. I was a baby, a year old, when she married my stepfather. I was the pretty little girl in the family that all the grown-ups loved. Seeing there were 4 older stepsisters, they wanted a little girl to play, to take care of. I asked my mother years later, why did you marry a man that was 16 years older than you were? And she just said, well, someday you'll understand. So
do you understand yet?
No, I still don't. I never did understand.
All right.
But my grandfather made up for our fathers. When he did come in the wintertime, he was wearing a heavy fur coat. When he picked me up, I must have really burrowed into that fur coat. Later on, somehow, where it came from or what it was, it was too young for me to remember. It must have been a fur collar from an old coat. And it was given to me as a replacement for my grandfather's fur coat. And I must have attached myself to that fur collar, because I can remember going to bed with it, and snuggling into that collar. That's what I sort of partly remember and partly made up. When I started school, I was Maggie Rempel, like my stepfather's last name.
Right.
And after a year or so of school, during the summer recess, my mother said to me, your name is actually not Maggie Rempel. And she tried to explain to me what a stepfather was. I went back to school after the holidays when he did the roll call, and he called out, he said, Maggie Rempel, and I wouldn't speak, I didn't say anything. When he said again, Maggie Rempel, no Maggie Rempel, then he looked up and but he knew the background,
Yeah.
But he says, how come you're not answering? I said, because my name is not Maggie Rempel, my name is Margaret Dick. And he tried to process that.
All me. Why not take all of me, baby? Oh, can't you see?
Actually, I was raised on the farm where I was raised. No English was spoken in the house. It was Low German language. And when I started school, I knew what yes or no meant, But otherwise, I had very little knowledge of the English language. Oh, my schooling, from the time I got a book in my hands, I don't think I ever put it down. You know, what the teacher was doing, he'd start the day with the youngest class, the book to read and work to do, and then he'd pass on to the second grade, so forth, you know.
Right, right.
So he said, he handed me the book and he said, "Margaret, here, read this." So I read it without much faltering, you know.
Right.
And he said, "You're not in the grade you should be in." He says, "I'm advancing you."
Wow.
That year I was told that I would either be allowed to go to school just the days when I was not helping out at home, or not at all. And I had to stay home and milk the cows and do the chores that had to be done on the farm, help look after my younger brothers and sisters, and in other words, be a mother,
Right.
a second mother to the family. This was in 1932. The radio set was in a separate room where there was not much interference. I would pick up this thing and listen to it for a while. Usually I'd sneak because I was supposed to be doing something, but I'd pick it up and I'd listen to it. And then later on, my dad started talking about, he often talked about the news, you know. And he said, "I wonder who came in Germany, who was elected there." He said, "Did anyone listen to the crystal set?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "I listened to it." And he said, "Well, I didn't know anything about elections or anything. But from what I got from it, Hitler did come in." And he said, "Oh, that means war." Yeah, your dad and his two of his brothers and another one or two fellows, they had a band. This was actually in the 1930s, in the late 1930s, and they'd be playing dance bands at the fair, Altona Fair, and I was 16 years old, and of course they had a small country band where they were playing music of the 40s, like the Isle of Capri. That was a popular song at that time. And during the dancing, this young man, a good-looking young man, came and asked me to dance. So we danced. And I was 16. He was 6 years older than I was. He came over to see me a couple of times in the fall, yes, and then in the winter. I didn't think I was going to see him again because he didn't have a car, and it was, you know, he wasn't going to drive 10 miles. After the first snow fell and he could no longer drive a car.
So he came on a horse with a horse.
He came a sleigh.
Horse and a sleigh.
Yeah. When a boy courted a girl, it was usually Sunday night because the rest of the week was too busy. This was in 1937 when we got married. Customary thing, once a girl went out with a boy or got to know one, the sooner they got married, the better. My parents actually wanted me to get out of the house so they wouldn't have to worry about me.
I could see she wore a plain golden ring on her finger.
Almost heaven, West Virginia.
Dennis and Wally, the two older boys, Dennis was always the leader. He was always the one to get into mischief. The boys were playing outside, and they had happened to dig a hole in the snowbank from the top. So Wally got stuck head first, whether he did it purposely.
I took a look down the hole and somebody lifted my feet and put me down head and shoulders into the hole, and I couldn't get out.
And one time I heard him crying, and I ran out to see what was the matter, and he was tied up on the tree. And then they he used a chair for him to stand on. Then they took the chair away, and here he was hanging and crying, he was in pain. And I remember going to him and lifting him, holding him up, but I couldn't do anything but hold him. I had to call for help.
And this one here with me on the swing instead of hanging from my neck.
I know that Lorna has a picture of herself when she was probably about 2 years old, and she had a habit of picking up her dress and putting it under her nose for comfort, and it was just something that came to me. That's a sexy one.
Look at the stance.
Look at that.
Mother.
And that's me with Lorna.
So Lorna never got...
That was when my mom knew how to dress.
Yeah, I used to make most of my dresses.
Picture of me beside a tree here. There's an axe in the background because we were chopping our own wood those days.
And this is...
You missed all that stuff. You city slicker.
Yeah, you city slicker.
Yeah, because Jerry was born in the city.
He was, and he was born in 1951.
And he missed all of this country Altona experience.
Missed it by that much.
Yeah.
Okay.
One spring when the snow was when there was lots of water around, that was when Dennis was just a little kid, maybe 3-4 years old. He was out playing in the water, and of course he filled his boots with water. Then he'd come in with his wet feet and crying because he wanted dry shoes. So I'd put dry ones on him, and he'd go out again and do the same things over it. So finally I was up to the last possible pair of dry shoes, and I put our boots, and I put them on him, and I said, well, the next time you do this, you're coming in and you're staying in. And I looked out the window, and sure he was back in the water again. And I said, didn't I tell you you were going to stay in if you did? And he said, well, I didn't want to, but the other boys made me do it.
We had a number of trees in Altona in the yard. There were quite a few trees.
Well, there was
one was a really large tree.
Yeah, one that was the main in the front yard, and then there were other trees in the back,
right,
in the background.
Threesome in Altona still. Lorna, myself, and Dennis.
Those are the lilac bushes in the back.
Yeah.
In the garden.
We had a pretty good sized yard there.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
This is
I didn't want to move away from there.
When did you move from Altona to Winnipeg?
In 1950.
And
1st of November in 1950.
right after Halloween. So I remember sitting in the back of the moving truck, My brother and myself were sitting on the couch in the bed of the truck under a tarp on a rainy, cold day.
It was a cold day.
It was very cold, and my dad and my mom, the truck driver, and my sister were in the cab of the truck. And we stopped in Morris for hot chocolate. I remember that. And that was very welcome. And it was a long drive. Winnipeg to Morris in those days, it didn't take just an hour and a half.
One early morning, it may even have been just before dawn, it may even have been dark. Mom got us out of bed. She said, "Kids, come here, come here, come here." So we ran to the window, which was, of course, covered with frost. She wiped away some of the frost from the window, and we looked outside, and the snow had drifted almost to the height of the window. And she said, "Wait, wait, wait." And suddenly we heard the noises of sleigh bells coming closer and closer. And all of a sudden, there was this horse pushing through the snow. The snow was up to his chest, pushing through the snow, pulling a sled. And there was a light swinging inside the cabin of the sled, and they disappeared. And it's a memory I'll never, never forget.
It was a movie. It was a description of a garden. It was one of the first colored movies I saw. This girl was at that strange house, and there was a fence around the garden. Gate to the fence was locked. She wanted to know what that garden looked like. She found a key to the gate that led into that garden. That's when the colored picture changed from black and white to colored.
Okay, that sounds...
And it was just a beautiful garden that you can envision, you know.
Right.
Somehow the father finds out about the garden that he's tried to keep hidden for so many years and doesn't want to see. And at first he's very angry that that garden was discovered, but eventually, I don't know how to explain it. This girl was very forward in her manner, the way she went about introducing people to each other, right, and coming forward, and she made him see things that he hadn't seen before.
I was just wondering whether I could think of childhood escapades and things like that. As you know, you were born when we lived on Aberdeen Avenue, and then from Aberdeen we moved to, to Charles Street.
Where are you going,
After that we moved to St. Boniface, and you can see it was 132 Berry Street. And with you're sitting beside Dad, and beside you is the little girl, Eliane, that I used to babysit for. I remember her coming, crying to me and trying to tell me something, and as she couldn't speak English, I didn't know what she was trying to tell me. She led me to the bathroom, and there was her hair ribbon in the toilet. And I asked you how it got there. You said that you didn't like the polka dots on it and threw it in the toilet. Well, I fished it out, washed it, and ironed it and put it back into her hair. And you see also the tricycle standing there in the corner. That was also your tricycle. Oh, when you were a baby, you used to have the habit of sucking the corner of your blanket, and you didn't want to go to sleep without it. So one night when we wanted you to go to sleep without it, I gave you a dime and said that you could spend it on candy the next day if you would give me your dummy. After fussing around for a while, you reached under the pillow, handed me the dime, and said, "Here's the dime. Give me back my gimme." So that was the end of that. But a couple of weeks later, I wanted to get you off that habit again of sucking the corner of your blanket. And I promised you a tricycle. And that time it worked. You really wanted that tricycle. After St. Boniface, we moved to Lipton from St. Boniface. You attended the Laura Secord School, I believe, just like Lorna did. Then we moved to Ruby Street, and there's you holding that lion that the boys gave you that you thought was so great. Do you remember that song, "The Lion Sleeps Tonight"? After Ruby Street, we moved to Arlington. From Arlington, we moved to Langside. It was 172 Langside. We lived there a little over a year. That's where Bob was born. Bob was born in Langside. And from Langside, we moved to Yonge Street. But that one was taken when we lived on Yonge Street, I believe. You're playing with your toys. Bob has got his little tractor there, or whatever it is, and I'm not sure what you're playing with, but that was taken when we lived on Yonge Street. And then there's another picture. I believe that was also taken when we lived on Yonge Street, of you and Bob sitting on the armchair. That's a cute picture. That's the brotherly love, isn't it? That was the house we lived in when Lorna and Barry got married. And after that house, we moved to, from Yonge Street, we moved to Furby Street. That's the way it was. Yeah, that one was taken on Yonge Street, I believe, of you with your with the hamsters. That is you, isn't it? Or is that Bob? I can never figure out when you were babies, when you were children. I'm still trying to figure out whether that was you or whether that was Bob. I think maybe that could be Bob playing with your hamsters. I believe that's what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, different generations. Yeah,
That's pretty well. That's not that far apart.
Yeah.
Elvis Presley, was it 1952 or something like that?
57 was Elvis.
They weren't that far apart, I don't think. Elvis
5
and the
years.
Beatles.
Which were that group when we were still in St. Boniface that was popular person at that time?
And so
Elvis was around already, I guess.
This was the radio.
Sunday nights is usually how it went.
When did we get our first television?
and
I'm pretty sure it was Arlington. It was a little portable TV, right? And when it got too hot, they were old tube TVs, right? So when it got too hot, the horizontal hold or the vertical hold would go all wonky, and you couldn't watch it. I think, but I can fix this. And you can still get them, those little plastic lemon things, real lemon, right?
oh yeah,
Well, I filled it up with water, and the
my God.
TV's on. It's too hot. Whoosh, boom, TV goes off. Uh-oh. I turn it off again, right? And I don't tell anyone anything until the next day. I figure, well, it's dried out. And it works. And it didn't do that again. So then I was able to tell my mom and my dad what I had done.
Dad was busy at work and I wasn't well. So it was up to Dennis, the oldest one, to, I think Dad had brought home a tree, and he wanted Dennis to put it up when he was at work.
Okay.
So Dennis was in charge of it, and the tree was too tall for the room. So instead of cutting it off at the bottom, he cut it off at the top. And it was the most unusual looking Christmas tree.
So I remember Dad, he had ugly trees, he would make it look good. He would drill holes in the trunk and he'd take a branch off somewhere else, whittle it down, stick it in the hole, right?
He was very talented. He was a carpenter.
I remember the first Christmas tree we had with light. After we got electricity, we were still in Altona.
Okay.
And we got electricity one summer. And then at Christmas time, we had our first Christmas tree. Well, of course, he had to buy that because that one had to be extra special. So he got the tree and he got all the decorations. And he had so much satisfaction of trimming that tree.
Right.
But no one was supposed to touch it. We were not supposed to move one little ornament. It had to be where he put it. And if one of us happened to change it when he wasn't around, he'd just take a look at it and who moved that ornament? And he knew immediately that somebody else had moved an ornament.
Recognized everything. That is a family photograph taken with a fishing rod to activate the camera. Somehow we rigged up the fishing line to pull the shutter on the camera. That's why it's off center probably.
Right.
And that would be before Bob's time, right?
Okay. All right.
Yeah, about 1960.
Yeah.
And what's the deal with the fishing rod?
We used the fishing rod and the line to activate the camera, because it was a manual camera with a trigger for a shutter, and somehow we managed to rig the line up to activate the shutter. Okay. That's why I'm standing with my hands behind my back and I'm working the fishing line.
These chairs you mentioned, that was...
Yeah, they must have been new at that time.
The toe breakers.
The toe breakers, why?
Because the back legs sloped backwards really far.
Oh.
So you'd walk behind them and they
Oh,
always
you'd hit
stuck out and you'd always be stubbing your toes.
Your dad got them for me for a Christmas
Everybody
present,
would
the table.
have harsh
And I
words.
guess he hadn't watched that part of it. And whenever we wanted to go around the table, you'd...
Oh, everybody you'd hear, ow!
Yeah, go ahead, Margaret.
Oh, it was so funny. He had bought this wonderful table and chairs for me, and he thought it was such a big gift. And here he swore every time he looked.
You gotta give a little.
Oh, that was Lorna's wedding.
I would say.
Yeah. She's pinning on my
How old was she?
corsage.
17 when she got married? Mom?
No, she was 19.
19?
Now, where were you living when...
Young Street.
Okay.
And this is not in color, is it?
No.
No, I was wearing pink.
It's a beautiful picture.
Yeah. We have a beautiful sister. She always says she's the best sister we have, so
She's
I
right.
have to agree.
There's Margaret with another baby.
That's me. That's me.
You. Okay.
What did she write on the back? 63. I was just born on December 18th, 1962, so that could have been 63. This is an infamous picture that she always talks about. I'm about to grab the candle,
Right.
and that's her hand reaching out to catch me.
Oh, okay.
I remember the day before that blizzard, I was admitted to the St. Boniface Hospital for some, just for procedure or whatever it was. room that I was in was right next to the river. And when that storm blew in, it was so strong and so windy. In the morning, the same attendants that we'd had the night before, they came in the morning and it was storming, and they said, well, the evening staff or the night staff couldn't come in. They had to do double duty.
I was always into camping and fishing, that kind of stuff. And I had steady work for quite a while, so I figured, well, I can afford to get my own boat. I needed some repairs, so I spent $500 and I bought the whole shebang for $500, and I took it home. I did the patching on it and repaired a few things. And I took it to Brandon Avenue to the Red Wine Boating Club for its first float. My motor broke down. Oh, yeah. Somebody had reversed the water pump, so I got towed back, but I kept that boat for, I guess, 3 or 4 years before I went on to the next one. And then I got married, and I didn't have money for a boat after that. So.
That's the glory of love.
Well, I don't know what Wally remembers of it. I mean, it was a big change. Lorna and Dennis were already married. Or they were raising their own family and busy with their life. I don't know how much they remember, of that change at all.
Oh, you felt it more than we did, because it was just you and Bob. The rest of us were not that involved anymore.
Well, the children were. It now was the beginning of grandchildren. Well, after my husband and I separated, but I knew that I had to earn some wages. And that was in 1968, 69. First of all, I waited the first summer because I wanted to wait till Bob was in school before I went to work. And then I picked up the paper and I saw the Victorian Order of Nurses wanted home care helpers. So I went the next day after I saw the ad and applied, and they said that you're just the type we're looking for. So that's how I got my start in home care.
Now, there was one particular family that you ended up working with for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I told them I was getting interested in looking after one family and wanted a change from looking after elderly, sick, to a healthier family.
Right. You were really launching out on your own.
Yeah.
And can you just recall how that felt?
It was a real feeling of freedom to move forward most of my life up until then. It seemed that whatever I was doing, I was trying to please other people. And finally it came to this stage where I felt ready to strike out on my own.
All right, and you did.
Parents Without Partners was very essential in her divorce, post-divorce, in that it gave her evenings to sort of talk to other adults.
Right.
And over the years, she actually became vice president of the Manitoba chapter.
Okay. Edgeland was I was involved in the planning of that.
The early years Manitoba Housing, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you mean you were involved in the plan?
Well, Manitoba Housing was building a new area.
Okay.
And they were asking for help from residents because they were trying to build it according to our needs. Yeah. We had a budget that we had to work accordingly. And we were there right from the start when we chose the land.
And that would have been
to-
you and Bob.
Bob was with me at that time.
Okay.
He was about 14, I think, 13, 14.
School, wasn't he? He was still going to school.
We had just moved. He was just going into high school.
Yeah.
So he must have been about 16.
Okay.
And we lived there for 10 years.
Okay.
And I really liked the housing because it was something
No, I don't think I do.
that I designed, you know. I'd been here a number of years, and at first when I moved in, there were activities that I was interested in. But people moved away and things changed over the years. But there seemed to be less and less informative programs or activities. People seemed to concentrate on exercises and fun things and to be entertained. Some of the people said that when they retired because they wanted to be entertained. They did no longer need educating, and I found that so ridiculous. And what do you mean? You're going to stop learning? I said, don't you continue learning all your life?
Right.
I just didn't understand their reasoning at all. When you reach my age, which is in the 90s, older people need younger people. So it's very beneficial to make and keep friends with the younger generation. Because when we're old people getting together, it's just, we're talking about our experiences and not what the young people are experiencing. I myself have 4 sons and 1 daughter, and I mean I have grandchildren, I have great-grandchildren, and I can see how things are developing, how they're changing. What we felt was exciting in our youth, it's nothing to the younger generation. Very often they look at you with a blank look on their face, and what is she talking about, you know? But this helps in opening up their mind, and sometimes they say, well, Grandma experienced a lot more than I ever thought she did. I just find it so interesting to watch a little child grow up instead of just older people getting together.
Right.
And reminiscing is good. But I mean, you just need you need to keep up with your life. I think of especially when I think of being at my grandparents' place. Oh, that was, when I think back to that time, being a little girl of 4 or 5 years old, that was the heyday of my life, was being with them, and it was just so wonderful.
Hello, Saint Frog, give me heaven, for I know my mother's there, and you'll find her with the angel over on the golden star. She'll be glad it's me a-speaking. Won't you call her for me, please? For I surely want to tell her that we're
just won't go out alone. It seems that she must have a chaperone. When we go out, no matter where we're bound, there's always somebody around. Oh, she brings her father, her mother, her sister and a brother. Oh, I never see Maggie alone. She brings her uncles, her cousins, she's got 'em by the dozens. Oh, I never see Maggie alone. And if I phone her, say to her sweet, where shall we meet? Supposing that we eat, she brings her father, her mother, her sister and a brother. Oh, I never see Maggie alone. I bought a roadster two-seated, I even had it heated so that I could see Maggie alone. While we were riding and a-kissing, the engine started missing, and we were a long ways from home. I got right out then, as fast as I could. I found what was wrong, for when I raised the hood, there was her father, her mother, her sister and a brother. Oh, I never see Maggie alone.